I want to bring in now Dr. Daria Long. She's an emergency room physician and a clinical assistant professor at the University of Tennessee. Good to see you, doctor. So how concerned are you, and should all of us be, about the rise in cases?
Yeah, Frederica, hi, good to see you. I'm watching this very closely because I am concerned about it. I would say we have not yet exceeded the capacity of our health systems yet. But Frederica, that means that now is a really pivotal moment, because it means that if we can start to be smart and strategic about how we're managing our risk, that is the best chance we have of keeping this under control and minimizing infection while we can maximize how much we can get back into society.
And then there are also concerns of, kind of a slow so-called second wave, later on in the year, possible spike following 3 weeks of protests, the winter months alongside maybe, flus, etc. What are some of the ways you think people should manage their anxieties and all of that and manage the risks?
Frederica, this is exactly the question I've been getting. I've been getting it from schools and companies, from my patients and family. I've been getting it from people on social, on Instagram as well. And I realized myself and a co-author of mine, Dr. David Katz, we co-wrote a piece together on this, realized we needed to give people a framework to be able to make their own decisions now and going forward. And it's based on two things. One is knowing that you're, as an individual, risk level. Are you high risk with high blood pressure and diabetes, or are you on the very low risk end of the spectrum? And then once you know that, understanding this new concept that we discussed called exposure dose level. That's really important.
Okay, so tell me about this exposure dose level. What does that mean?
Yeah. So exposure dose level, up until this point, when we were in lockdown, we said you're supposed to have zero exposure to the virus. Now we're saying, as people are starting to open up the economy, people are going to be exposed to some amount, and it's no longer zero. But what we're saying is you have to keep that dose low and be smart about it. Think about, Frederica, if you've ever tried to say, I don't want to gain weight. Well, that doesn't mean you have no calories. It means you don't want to exceed a certain amount. Same way with exposure dose. You don't want to exceed the amount to get sick. And if you do, you still want to keep it low because it may decrease your chances of being severely ill. So everybody really needs to start paying attention to their exposure dose level. And there are 4 factors: density of people, distance from each other, duration, and degree of activity. It's the 4 Ds. Degree of activity. Are you sitting quietly, or are you shouting or exercising together? Those 4 things are like a sliding scale to determine your dose level of any activity.
So then, obviously, exposure dose level might be pretty high if you choose to go to demonstrations, political rallies, etc. What kind of advice do you have for people who are, engaging in large gatherings like that?
Yeah, so for one, I tell people in general, anything that's really a high dose exposure. So yes, protests with a lot of people, political rallies, concerts, large sporting events. For the most part, we got to be careful and avoid those if possible. And if you do go to them, the people who are going should be only the lowest risk level in the spectrum, and they should be wearing masks. And after they go to them, they cannot have contact with anybody who's in the higher risk level of the spectrum for 2 weeks. They need to quarantine themselves.
Wow. All right. Lots of restrictions still in place, and more restrictions because things are changing. All right, Dr. Daria Long, thank you so much.
Thanks, Frederica. Of course.